Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Mess. So today we're kind of continuing series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, and you know what time it is. It's time to test more Sega Saturn games you've requested on the current work-in-progress Sega Saturn core. Because the core keeps getting updated, we get new features and new improvements to games, and you guys want to see some games retested and some games for the first time, so that's what we're going to be doing today. Before I get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But let's get right into the games. One of the games you guys have been asking to see is KO Flying Squadron 2. And I will say that this game is much improved from the last time we tested it. The last time was maybe like 3 months ago, and this game basically had no audio whatsoever, and it had some graphical glitches in the sprites and backgrounds. The FMV you basically had to hit start to mash through or else it would freeze the core. Now obviously if you can't tell, the FMV is working absolutely fine, as is the actual gameplay itself. If there's anything wrong with this game on the current core, I could not tell whatsoever. All of the graphics are drying correctly, all of the music is good, there was never any freezing, the FMV played. This is basically just 100% improved since the last time we took a look at it. You could get in game last time and you could get some gameplay in, but the core had a tendency to freeze, and I do remember this because I tested this game more than once because it is one of my favorite 2D Sega Saturn games of all time. And it's awesome to see it get improved because like I said last time, this was just a little bit of a mess, and now it is so much better. And that's the great thing about all these core iterations. It's not just that new games start working, it's the old games we've tested before that work decently enough now feel like original hardware, because that is what playing KO Flying Squadron 2 on the current core really does feel like. If this was not a real Sega Saturn, I would not be able to tell. If you put the hardware in a box and just handed me a controller, it would be almost impossible to detect which one I was actually testing. And that's so good for the core status. Like 3-4 months ago, you could pretty much tell on almost all games that you were playing a work-in-progress core, and now that is definitely getting narrower as far as the margin between real hardware and the FPGA core is in fact concerned. But as we move further into the game, this is a spectacular looking game. The 2D sprites, the backgrounds, the artwork, the parallax scrolling, and the overall sense of personality this game has is just second to none on the Sega Saturn, and that's why I'm sure most of you keep asking me to retest this one. And if you have any tests, leave them down below and I will definitely check them out, because the Sega Saturn library is absolutely massive, and even I don't know every single game on the hardware. Sometimes you request stuff that I've never heard before and I get to check out a new game, and that is always fun. But as I get further into the game, every once in a while I see a sprite slightly flicker, but it's only for like a fraction of a second, so if you're not pixel peeping on this game, it really would be hard to tell where anything was going wrong. But the best part about the game is it's not just a 2D action platformer, but those levels are amazing. It's also a horizontal cute 'em up shmup. Definitely has some Cotton and Cotton Boomerang vibes, but it is just so much fun to play. And last time I tested this, I couldn't even get to the second stage because the core would freeze before that happened. Now you can save in the current core, you can play this game, and I'm definitely going to try to beat it over the holidays when I have a little extra time. But if you've never checked KO Flying Squadron 2 out, definitely try it on the current core. Now moving over to the beat 'em up sections, Dungeons & Dragons Shadow over MiSTer was another game that either used to didn't boot whatsoever or would basically freeze almost all the time. Now if you load the game up on the current core, you get right to the player select screen and you can start beating up some monsters in the Dungeons & Dragons universe, and this game is just an absolute blast. Now I know what you're thinking, we have the CPS2 cores from Hotego, and that is true, but the Saturn versions are worth playing in their own right, and as far as a testing video is concerned, this is just 100% working better at this point in time. Last time I even tried this game, there was graphical corruption. The time I tried it before that, it absolutely just refused to launch. Now you can play the game and absolutely enjoy it, and these games are spectacular. If you've never played Tower of Doom or Shadow over MiSTer, 100% check them out. Just make sure you play Tower of Doom first, because Shadow of MiSTer is the better of the two games, but they're both still classics, but you want to play them in order of release, that way you don't have to play the slightly lesser game second. But this looks spectacular, the feel is there, everything sounds great, and this game also has a spectacular soundtrack with those fantasy vibes. So go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds, I'll be back with more Saturn games that just seem to work on the core. Looks great, sounds great, plays great. This is just the Shadow over MiSTer that I absolutely know, love, and remember. And I do love in some stages you can get in random encounters, obviously emulating tabletop D&D. When you're going down river on the raft here, if you avoid all of the enemies, you can basically get a free level where you do nothing. But if you bump into any of them, you do need to fight them. Although honestly, I'm not a huge D&D player, but tell me down below if you are. I've tried it a few times, just never really got into it. Maybe the people I were playing with just weren't doing a great job of selling the concept for me. But if you want to play Shadow over MiSTer today, you can 100% do it on the current core. I see absolutely no issues with the game whatsoever. Now, as far as testing requests are concerned, Wipeout is always in the comments, and I realize it's probably been like 3 months since we actually talked about this game, and considering it's an absolutely awesome 3D racing game on the Saturn, we definitely want to take another look. FMV seems to be working perfectly fine, and I think last time we looked at this, that was definitely stuttering and would freeze the core, because that's what used to happen in the core. FMV sequences would just have to be mashed through with the start button, or else the core would freeze entirely. But now that we're into Wipeout, this is definitely improved over the last time we took a look at it. It was not running this fast, and there was definitely some issues with the polygons, or obviously in the Saturn's case, the quads. This is definitely a fun game, but steering in it definitely can throw your mind for a loop, and big thanks to Andy D for helping with the captures this week. He is the one playing Wipeout here, and I just love seeing it on the current core. It's a pretty game. It shows off the 3D aspects of the Sega Saturn, mixing 2D sprite work in there. It can definitely be tricky because the course does split and it does not indicate that to you. But this, again, is just another game that has seen such huge improvements compared to the last time we looked at it. And that's what we're finding with these new cores. Every time they come out, things are improved, new games work, but games that used to work decently now just feel like they are real hardware. It seems like we're getting close to this core not being finished, but being finished enough where the majority of the library works. But it's going to be interesting when this core is close to done, having to see how many people test all the different games, because the Saturn library is absolutely massive, especially when you add in the Japanese region. There's going to be thousands of games to test and look for bugs in to be able to report those so that the core can get improved. But something like Wipeout's definitely going to be on everyone's first test list, because it is one of those games that everyone knows on Sega Saturn, and a ton of people, if they collect, definitely own. It is not an easy game. Getting first place definitely takes some challenge, but Andy D here is running in second place, and let's see if he can actually eke out a win. But as we do that, just take a look at all of the graphics, all of that distortion on the course there. It does just draw like you would expect it to on real Saturn hardware. So as far as how this game works is concerned, definitely playable, definitely fun, and you should definitely check it out. Now everyone, and I mean everyone, keeps asking for more Magic Knight Ray Earth footage, and I totally get it. This game has a huge vibe, these chibi characters here with this story. This is just a game that has so much charm and so much unique visual flair that I'm really not surprised that people keep asking to take a closer look at it. It is working well, it is in English, you can play it, you can save, you can definitely check it out. But I haven't really gotten that far into the game because it's not my favorite thing in the world, so it's very possible it might freeze an hour or two in, so I wouldn't try to get your first playthrough in on this yet. But it's got absolutely amazing dialogue and voice acting, and the sound is clear in the current core. Go ahead and listen for 30 seconds, and I'll come back and tell you more games that work on the core.
Clef, don't be a fool!
Go east. Precia is there, within the Forest of Silence. Obtain weapons from her and join Mokona.
Well. It's been far too long, Clef.
You always were a weak-minded follower, Alcyon. Your alignment with evil disappoints, but does not surprise me.
And yet I remain grateful to you, dear Clef.
For a 90s game, that voice acting is spectacular. I'm not saying it's the best voice acting ever put to a video game, but it is really good considering this is from the 90s, and some games like Resident Evil had some of the worst voice acting you could get. But everyone kept asking for this game, so of course I wanted to show it to you, and it is one of those things. Everyone remembers it. It's got a dog. It is cute and fun and colorful. Of course everyone wants to see more of this, and it is just working here. Every once in a while it seems like the frame hitches a little bit, but otherwise that was all I saw in the captures that would lead me to believe that it's not performing as original hardware would be expected. But if you've never played this game before, definitely check it out. You may end up absolutely loving it. Now another game that barely worked last time we showed it, would freeze almost constantly, was Decathlete from Sega. This is one of those classic arcade games. It's a button masher with a little bit of strategy behind it, and like I said last time we showed this to you, you could get into the character selection screen, but once you selected a character, the core would 10 out of 10 times freeze right when it tried to load into the game. That has been completely alleviated. You can play every single event in Decathlete. You can have a ton of fun if it's the type of genre you love. Just be prepared for your fingers to hurt when you are done, because you need to beat the buttons on your controller like they owe you money, or else you're never going to see any sort of medal at the end of it. But this is the type of game that was huge in the 90s, both in arcades and at home, and this is a great game to take out at game night when you had friends over, and even still today it is fun, because it is so easy to pick up and learn, but actually getting world records and winning does take a lot of practice. But everything here just looks like straight perfection. I do not see, hear, or feel anything in the footage that makes me think that it's not just a Sega Saturn, and that's where we're getting with this core on certain games. That's what I want you guys to understand. Depending on the game you're playing, you might not have any idea this is an FPGA core, and obviously that's always the goal of something. The goal is not, though, however, to screw up and fall flat on your ass. It does happen in the game, and I love the animations. It kind of sells just how badly you really did. But Decathlete's one of those games from Sega. It is awesome, it's fun, it's unique, and this was such a big genre in the 90s. Konami had their version of it, Capcom had their version of it, Sega did. These type of games were just huge, and I think Decathlete does it better than absolutely anybody else. And you can see here with the 3D, the 2D aspects, the rotation of the ground, the skybox, everything just looks incredible when you're looking at it in motion. So as far as this game's concerned, I would probably say right now, from what I've seen, what you're seeing here, that this works exactly as good as original hardware. But if you notice anything whatsoever, leave me a comment down below, because usually 5,000 plus people watch these videos. I've got one set of eyes, you guys have 5,000, I do depend on you to tell me when you see things. But you'll see here, trucking into the finish, able to cross the finish line, and it is going to be a world record. But honestly, the world record's not that hard to beat the first time you play the game, because all of the default records are pretty much set up so that you do get more new world records. Now another game that you guys keep asking to show is X-Men vs Street Fighter, and this does work until you actually try to play the game, and then it has a really interesting glitch going on. Andy D captured these, he was chatting with me and told me it would be really interesting to look at, and I 100% agree. The actual screen here, the attract mode is working, the sound is great, everything is good, you see the title screen, you would think that you're about ready to get into the game. It even shows you gameplay within the actual attract screen of two different CPU players fighting, and the sound quality on the attract screen seems to be absolutely perfect as well. So go ahead and listen just for like 25 seconds, I'll come back and show you one of the strangest visual glitches the Saturn core can manage.
Optic blast. X-Men versus Street Fighter.
So when you actually take control of the game with the start button, all of a sudden the colors are just going to basically invert themselves, and there's going to be a lot of corruption. Not sure if it's something with the frame buffer or a glitch or a missing mode in VDP1 or VDP2, but this is definitely not how this game is supposed to look. And you will see that it does try to execute code within the fight, but it's going to freeze absolutely quickly. But Andy D went ahead and reset the Saturn core in the on-screen display menu, and this is what happened. The BIOS menu just absolutely went wild. The colors got crazy, it started jumping around, but honestly, of all the captures I have done and seen for the MiSTer FPGA series, this might be the most visually pretty thing I've ever noticed. I love the colors, I love the jump around. It looks like it was something that an artist developed, and I just can't get enough of it. But those are the games we tested for the current Sega Saturn core. Leave me a comment down below and tell me what you want to see tested next, as I absolutely do love covering the games you want to see. But the current core is awesome. It's playing so many games so well. There's definitely still work to be done. There's definitely still glitches, but this thing keeps improving with every release, and I can't wait to see what the next release brings us. Short of that, I'll have videos throughout the week. I'll be back next Thursday with more MiSTer videos, and I'm sure I'll have some extras in the nighttime, because between SRG 320 and FPGA Zoom Spas, they keep releasing cores like it's their job. Short of that, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.